I am Liz Herrick, a Principal Learning and Performance Consultant at BD. For all you former high school teachers out there, I was once a high school English teacher. And I then moved into client-based corporate training, where I had customers like Novell, AT&T, Hewlett-Packard, et cetera. I then worked for a company called Lightspan, and we developed core curriculum educational software using stories, characters, and games to teach. I then worked at a company where we had clients like Fisher Price and Leapfrog, and I got to work with the real SpongeBob SquarePants, which was a definite highlight of my life. And now I proudly work at BD, where we develop medical management solutions to ensure patient safety. So if you work in a hospital or in healthcare, you may know the Pyxis device or the Alaris pump, which we support in our roles. So we know that 90% of what we learn is quickly forgotten. It's a human survival technique. Our brains purge what we don't use. It's truly a use it or lose it situation. And if we can't remember it, we can't use it on the job. And that's the goal of most of our learning events. So we also know that there are many techniques that can be used before, during, and after learning events to support recall and transfer. And that's what this session is about. Rather than focusing on the learning itself, the main event, we're going to consider how microlearning can be used to support it. So take a moment to think of a learning event that you would like to focus on and keep in mind during this session. It could be anything: instructor-led training, a change management plan, an e-learning program, anything. And as we look at the examples, consider how you might be able to use a similar approach to increase retention and transfer. The examples you see, they're kind of conceptual templates that you can use to create your own modules. So if you see something you like, copy it. I'm all for it. So my first scenario is for before a learning event. Last year, our leadership team invested in our professional development and sent about 13 team members to ATD 23. We were very lucky and grateful for that. And my goal was to make sure that the associates who attended and the associates who weren't able to attend could gain the most value from this opportunity. And this audience they were learning and performance consultants, but many of them had never been to a large on-site conference before. So I was keeping that in mind. So I started off with a quick countdown microlearning module. Now, with all microlearning, of course, we want to make sure that every screen and sometimes every word counts. So I started off here with the word countdown to build some time-based anticipation about the event and get some excitement going. You'll see then that on the next two screens, I included links to the ATD site where they could immediately start looking at the sessions, along with a prompt that was easy. Right away, a call to action. I knew it would be overwhelming when they got to the site and saw all of the sessions. And so this was something easy to do. Just find one session that interests you. So then I had this question, which is, why did they pick that session? And this question and the format serves many purposes. So it's open-ended, meaning they have to generate an answer, which is using higher order thinking skills. It's engaging more of the brain. And by answering why they chose the session, they're positively priming themselves and creating a sense of commitment to learn from that session. And they're determining on their own if the content is relevant. So overall, I'm kind of nudging this behavior moving forward because I really want them to ask themselves this question for every session that they're going to consider attending. I also chose a task early on in the module that introduced a choice. And choice supports behavior change. It's empowering. And as soon as we make a choice, we rationalize it in our minds, and which also makes it empowering. And it supports intrinsic motivation, which is another positive prime. So a lot going on here with just this one question. So question for you guys: who has the most impact on learning transfer? If you have an idea, pop it in the chat. Any thoughts on who has the most impact? The learner, the teacher, those are common thoughts. It turns out it's actually the associate's manager. And the conversations managers have before a learning event to set expectations and goals for learning is the most important factor in learning transfer. So the next card here was designed to prompt the learner to talk to their manager about the session they chose and discuss their learning goals. So this is when you'll see the word goal appear here. For the first time, and it's planting the seed that there are expectations for their learning here. I did warn the managers. They knew this was coming so they could talk to their associates. Then, now that they've been nudged to put some thought into their choices, I provided a frictionless link to where they could build their agenda on the site. You'll see a lot of links in my examples because I wanted to make it very easy for them to get to what they needed. And also knowing that it's kind of overwhelming when you see all the choices, I gave them some tips here about how you could filter by track, but I also used the word goals again here on this slide. And then I have another question for you. What do you think is the most popular day of the week? You throw that in chat. I know my favorite. My favorite's Saturday, but I'm seeing a lot of Fridays, and that is the answer. Friday is the most popular day of the week. Now, why is that? We're still working, but it's because humans actually enjoy anticipation more, sometimes more than the actual event itself. So that is very popular. So I decided to take advantage of what I'm calling the Friday effect on my last slide, which was to build some anticipation. It was January. Some of us who live in New Hampshire were very happy to see a picture of sunny San Diego here and excited that that's where we were going for the conference. And I had this kind of watch for more info soon to keep them excited. So then my next microlearning module was really getting into digging into the goals here. So you'll notice right away, I started with the word share. So that was very intentional. I wanted to introduce the idea that and prime them for social learning, which should be exciting for them, but I wanted to set that up right away. Then you see so much to learn. Now that could be, oh my gosh, so exciting, so much to learn, or oh, so much to learn. You could take that any way. So, but that leads the learner into the true goal here of working together to share what we've learned and figure out how we can apply it. So this is the main goal. And then I used the word let's here to make it feel really inviting and collaborative, and then chose a graphic that had social learning on it as well from the conference website. The next 3 slides set up a OneNote notebook that I created to capture our session notes. And this notebook had a template with prompts in it. And the prompts asked them things like, what are the key takeaways? And how can we use this information? And by driving them to look at that template before the conference and the sessions, it gave them scaffolding and a scaffolding in their mind so that they could, when they're sitting in the session, better organize and encode the information that they're hearing so that they'll be able to remember it better. So they have that structure in mind. I also gave them an example here so they could see what good looks like. And again, lots of links straight to those pages because I want them to go look at those and get that priming. I finished with a tip for the newbies on how to take notes, and then ended with you're invited to kind of build that feeling of community. And then importantly, I scheduled all of the sharing sessions that we were going to have before we even went to the conference, because I wanted them to see those on their calendar and know that they're real and we really are going to share what we learned. My next example is a during example. Another group of about 10 people, we were attending a 2-day Learning Guild conference, microlearning. Same goal, same audience, but this time they're not newbies. They're very familiar with online conferences. And so this time I sent this out after the first day to help them really master the content that they were learning in the sessions. Now, to increase retention, active recall is required. Reviewing content does not work. You need to actively recall it. And one question is enough to unlock remembering an entire session. So there's one question for each of the 4 sessions. You'll notice the first one is transfer focused, and it's a choice. Again, starting with a choice, it's empowering. It gets them engaged. So I asked them, what would you like to start using right away? Then I had a standard recall question, then an open-ended transfer-focused question, and then another content recall question, all just to really get that information to gel for them about what they had just been learning. And then there was a free ebook, so I gave them a link to that. And then I finished with another choice and had them and to build in excitement and anticipation and commitment to the next day, and asked them, which session do you want to attend tomorrow? Then finally, this is an example of what to do after a learning event. I deliver everything DISC workshops, and it's very important for me to promote the ongoing use of DISC because I don't want it to be one and done. The power of this is to keep using it after the workshop. And my audience includes all different roles and job levels. You'll see this is a slightly longer module, but it's still micro. It starts off just kind of a warm welcome, thank you for attending. And then I had them pick their DISC style. This was totally for them, not for me. I just wanted them to connect with their style and prime it in their minds as they move through the rest of the module. Like, oh yeah, I'm an I or whatever I am. I then asked 2 open-ended questions that you'll notice are phrased in a way that as though they did this for sure. So I'm kind of nudging that this is the expected behavior. You should be using this. You should be having insights. And so even if they didn't, they will answer this. It'll get them to stop and think. And that's what I really care about. I just want them to stop and think and start using this tool. So these are kind of meant to nudge and get them to use it. I also set these up in my workshops, so it's not a surprise to them that I'm asking them questions like this. The next 4 cards are one for each of the styles. They're color coded, just like the styles in the training they received. D is always green, that kind of thing. That will help with recall. And these are standard multiple choice, but they do also kind of nudge them towards it's a learning opportunity as well. So I included questions about tips for working with that style. And once they answered the question, they could see strengths for that style there. So it's a kind of a mini learning, remembering kind of thing there. I then asked 2 questions that were definitely for me to assess the effectiveness of the program. These are based on Will Thalheimer's Performance-Focused Learner Surveys, which is a book I highly, highly recommend. Instead of asking Likert scale questions, which get pretty much meaningless data, he recommends the use of these statements, which we're finding get you much more actionable information that you can use. So I include those in my module. And then to finish up, I want transfer planning. It's so important. Of course, you want to do it during your learning event, but we want to encourage our learners to keep doing it throughout after the event and have a plan, commit to doing something. And when you type it, that's going to make it all the more real because typing will engage your brain that way. And then finally, I thank them for their time. But the most important thing to me was that they go use this tool. Because that's where they're going to see more information about their style and the other people that they work with. And so I teased them with a new feature and said, hey, go check this out. And I really want them to finish by going to that tool. So to quickly wrap up, think back to your goal and the situation that you might want to apply this to. And think about how could you carefully frame your content to support achieving your goal with your word choice, your visuals, your tone, etc. Can you use priming for the behavior change that you're looking for as a result of your training, your performance-focused microlearning and training? What could you do to focus on transfer, manager engagement, transfer planning, goal setting, motivation, commitment, and take advantage of all of those? What could you do to provide a structure for the learning in advance, again, so that they can better encode what they're learning? And then prompt that active recall afterwards so that they'll remember it. And then checking all your screens to make sure you're getting the absolute most out of every screen to be as efficient as possible. And then plan that last screen carefully, because of the recency bias. People really do remember that last screen. So you don't want it to be a throwaway, like a thank you or something. Make it in action, make it something really important that you want to leave them with. So that is the extremely micro fast version of everything I have there. And I don't know if we have time for Q&A, but there are my...
Hey, you know what? We are right on time. And honestly, everybody, can we get a round of emojis for Liz? Before we kind of wrap up here, Liz, what I really, really appreciated about some of the stuff you were sharing was, this idea of thinking about the learning experience more holistically and seeing the different aspects of it and how we can pull this in. And it was funny kind of seeing some of the chat and some of the pushback I've gotten over the years is sometimes we can get into this debate over, is this information, or is this marketing, or is this learning? And at the end of the day, we're trying to drive behavior change, and getting people to change behavior is really freaking hard work. It's not easy, and it requires a really dynamic set of ways to get somebody to go, you're walking this way and we want to get you walking this way. And that doesn't happen through any sort of single instance or any single interaction. And so I love the way you bring the two together, because I think there's so much opportunity for us to instead say, well, is this micro learning? Is this long form learning? Is this a live event? To say, well, there's one experience, and at the core of it is driving that behavior change. And what elements can we start to pull together to actually accomplish that? And whatever that takes is really what we're after.
Absolutely. And I did get good feedback from the team that those microlearning modules did help them better remember the sessions. And they actually learned from sessions they didn't even attend because we shared information.
Well, and I love that the other piece, and this is more me commenting, I've tried to keep up with all the comments, but the fact you also incorporate that feedback loop of how are we actually driving behavior change, not only by push, but also by pull, and encouraging them to actively participate, and then getting that feedback as well so that we can pivot. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I screw up just as much as I succeed. And so when we screw up and we make mistakes or things don't go according to plan, we go, well, now we know why and what we can do to change to do it differently moving forward.
Absolutely.
Cool.